I just thought I'd do a wee story from when I was a child. It kind of explains where my storytelling comes from. I got lots of stories when I grew up from my family. And the first one I told, I remember, is a story about a cat. So what I have to ask all yous to do is to kind of imagine you're about 5 years old, okay? So just kind of into your inner 5-year-old and just chillax. It's a nice wee cat story. To explain the background, when I was wee, I stayed at a Glasgow tenement, you know, kind of apartments on top of each other. And so we shared the toilet with the neighbours. So that was difficult when you're a wee child to go down the stairs with your mammy to go to the toilet. And sometimes my mammy would be away, so my granny would look after us. And my granny didn't hold with going down the stairs in the middle of the night. So when she tucked us into bed, what she would do is she would tell us a wee story. And it wouldn't be a wee story to kind of help us go to sleep. It'd be a wee story to so fill us with terror and horror that we would be too frightened to actually leave the bed to go to the front room to ask to go to the toilet. And this is one of those stories. So you're all at 5, you're all curried down with your brothers and sisters, and this is the story my wee granny told us. So she said, "Good night, boys and girls," and we all went, "Good night, Granny." And then one of my sisters said, "Could you tell us a story?" And my granny said, "Do you want a wee story?" And my sister said, "Yes, could you tell us a story about a wee pussycat?" So my granny looked at us and she went, "Okay. Once upon a time, there was a young man, and he lived in his house, and he worked very hard, and he was very good, and he had a lovely wee pussycat. And every day before he went to work, he'd put a wee bit of cream in a bowl, and he'd give it to the pussycat. But one day, he was in such a hurry to get to work, he was shaving himself, and he cut his chin just a wee nick. And so when he poured the cream out for his wee cat, a wee drop of his blood went into the cream. And the wee cat came over and it drank the cream. And it stopped and it kind of went, meow. It really liked the cream and it got the taste for human blood. Okay? I'm just warning you now, if anybody's sensitive here, you maybe want to step out the room for a second. So he bent down to pat his wee cat before he went to work. And as he bent down, the wee cat kind of went, "Ah!" and jumped at him. And it kind of got its claws into his neck and its teeth on him and ripped his vein out. And there was blood squishing everywhere. And the wee cat began to drink his blood. And the poor fella's screaming and screaming. The cat saw him and he fell to the ground and he's rolling about. And the cat's tearing his throat. Well, the neighbours all heard this. So the neighbours all came into his house. But it was too late. He was lying there dead, with his throat ripped open. And there was the wee cat, kind of licking at him. And the neighbours thought, "Oh, the poor wee cat, somebody's murdered its master and it's trying to lick him back to life." So they bent down to pick up the wee cat. And of course, the wee cat went, "Ah!" and jumped on them as well. And it ripped all their throats and they were all screaming. There was blood scooshing up and bouncing off the roof and all sorts. And they all went and they lay down dead as well. And the wee cat escaped and ran out the house. So my granny's telling this story to us and we're all lying in the bed going, "Granny, we don't like this story." My granny said, "I'm not finished yet." The wee cat ran out the house, ran down the stairs, out into the street. Well, this time the police came, and the police were chasing after the wee cat, and they cornered the cat. They had truncheons, they had nets and all sorts, and they jumped on the cat, but the wee cat went, "Ah!" and jumped on them, ripped all their throats out as well, and there was blood scooshing out of them, and oh my goodness, and the next thing they're all lying on the ground, twitching and bleeding out there, and the wee cat's laughing at them all, and the cat, there's a madness in the eyes, it just wants more blood, more human blood. "Granny, we don't like this story." "Not finished yet." The wee cat, it ran out in the street. Oh my goodness, the government was shocked. They called in the army, but the wee cat killed the army, ripped all their throats out. Everybody was coming out, citizens, and everybody was out trying to catch the wee cat. It killed them all. Soon the whole of the central belt of Scotland, there was a heap of dead bodies, all with their throats ripped out. The place was awash in blood. So finally the government didn't know what to do. So they called on the US Marines. And the US Marines came and they brought tanks and a couple of jets and a couple of nuclear bombs and, I don't know, Donald Trump. They brought a lot of deadly things with them. And they kind of got the wee cat and they surrounded the wee cat. And the wee cat knew it could not defeat the US Marines. So the wee cat ran away and hid, children. It ran away and hid. We were all lying there in the bed. We looked at my granny. We said, Granny, where did it hide? And my granny looked at us and said, it hid beneath your bed. Night, night, boys and girls. And with that, she left us all there, too terrified to get out the bed for a pee, because we knew if we stepped out the bed, the cat would get us. Shinny.